I know that we're all going to the World's Fair, premiered at Sundance. I actually saw it through the Film at Lincoln Center. They had a virtual
Oh,
thing
yeah.
like in May and loved it. It has stayed with me.
Thank you. That's really nice to hear.
You're welcome. And I actually watched it again last night and I felt like it affected me even more the second time around.
Oh, great. That's so nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
was
so
just talking
deep.
to somebody about it that it is you always feel pompous as a director maybe telling people that they need to watch your film twice, but I think you're so
Yeah.
distracted maybe the first time by like what could happen in it that you aren't training your eye exactly on what is happening in it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Um, And well, we're doing this for Chattanooga Film Festival, first of
Yep.
all. So I really appreciate you being here and talking to me.
Of course. And so are we Q&A right now, or is this have
Yes,
we started? All right, cool.
yeah,
We're in.
we can start. But I'm so glad you brought up Scream. Well, the first thing, yeah, I already told you, I know it premiered at Sundance. I actually saw it at Film at Lincoln Center, and it's playing Chattanooga Film Festival this week. And the really cool thing is that it's been picked up by HBO Max and Utopia for release early next year. So I wanted to say congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Very exciting, when you make a small film. I don't think the film is small in ambition, but in terms of budget, and it doesn't have big famous actors in it. There's always the risk of it getting lost, and it's been so nice that especially in this year when I think a lot of people are watching it virtually, that it's sort of connected really deeply with certain folks, and it's sort of
Yeah.
like had a life. And Sundance and new directors and the festival circuit has certainly helped with that a lot. A lot of critics singing its praises has really helped with that, and yeah, the HBO thing. To me, it's so exciting just because like I can really imagine some teenager who would really get a lot out of the movie scrolling around late
Yeah.
at night, seeing the picture, and turning it on, not knowing what they're getting into, and that to me, that's like the coolest thing to imagine.
Yeah. And I even obviously I'm not a teenager, but I feel like people at any age can relate to this.
Totally.
And Anna Cobb is so amazing in this. She's just wow. And the first thing I wanted to know is what was your inspiration for writing this story, and why did you call it the World's Fair Challenge? I was wondering.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, like I told you before we started recording, it's oddly enough like loosely inspired by a personal experience that I had growing up and posting fan fiction on a Scream message board, a message board dedicated to fans of the movie Scream. This must have been like 2000, 2001. I was 13 years old. My parents would go to bed. I would go down to the basement late at night and like write scary stories for people.
Oh,
And
that's so awesome.
yeah, I was like, I was fully me, and that was always me. And when I heard about like the creepy pasta phenomenon, which is like the name for this sort of like role playing,
Yeah.
scary story playing on the internet nowadays, like I was a little old for it. I never was a part of it myself, but I like totally knew that I would have been if I had been born 10 years later.
Yeah.
The Scream story I tell sometimes, which is like in a way an origin story for the film, is that this older guy started like commenting on my stories and got in touch, and sort of like strong-armed me into this like really intimate online relationship where like I was 13 years old and he knew that. He was this older gay man who was really like
I think your video froze for just a minute. We're frozen.
confiding
Like
in me and like almost depending on me.
I think we're having, can you hear me?
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can
Can
you
you hear
hear me?
Okay, cool. It was my fault. My Wi-Fi network was wrong.
Oh, but
uh,
can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. There's a thing saying my audio is trying to connect. So okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. So this guy was actually talking to you online.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So he was just like I am me whenever I would sign online as a kid, and like was really like trying to have this relationship with me, and we would talk about our favorite movies, and we loved the TV show Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah.
And then one night he IM'd me and he was like, "Hey, I have to tell you a secret." And he told me that vampires are real. He was
Ooh.
like, "Vampires are real. I have a new boyfriend who's a vampire. He drank my blood and I drank his blood, and I could feel myself turning into a vampire." And I blocked him and like just stopped engaging with this person online. I was like, I was old enough, obviously, to not like to know that it wasn't a good thing to be talking to an older male stranger on the internet as a
Yeah.
kid. But it's just such a rich, like I never knew if that was just like sort of like an innocent bit of role playing, if it was part of this like sort of like story world that we had kind of created with each other, or if it was like him trying to lure me into something, or if he really believed it.
Yeah.
Stuck with me as this sort of like strange personal encounter that I think is like a little more common than I realized when I made the film, like in the ways that like truth and fiction and the power dynamics of like relationships in this digital space, how complicated they can be. And a lot of that is sort of what the film is trying to speak about.
Yeah, there's so many layers to this film, and like I said, the second watch affected me even more than the first one, which I was kind of surprised. Um, and I mentioned Anna Cobb a little bit earlier, and she's so amazing in this. Um, what made you decide to cast her in the role of Casey?
Oh, and I forgot you also asked me about the World's Fair, right?
Oh
I didn't
yes, I'm sorry. I did.
I don't know where it came from. It kind of came to me in a dream, and I try to practice a type of filmmaking that can't just be like sort of explained on paper. Although I'm really happy when different people try to explain it in different ways on paper.
Yeah.
I'm proud of calling it the World's Fair because I think it's very evocative, and I think it calls to mind a lot of themes in the film, but at the same time, it just sort of like these sort of unconscious connections that like I was trying to make in a lot of the dreamier aspects of the film, like tickets coming out of an arm, or a woman saying she's turning to plastic in a red room, like dream imagery, or like trying to put on screen something that was reminiscent not of like the way like logical connections are made in the brain, but sort of like
Yeah.
unconscious connections are made in the brain. And World's Fair, as like the name of this challenge that everyone's taking, is sort of part of that. Although we're doing a screening tomorrow night at the actual World's Fair in Flushing, Queens, where they hosted it in the 30s and the 60s, and I'm very excited that
Oh,
we
that's so
watched the movie.
cool. That's really cool. Congratulations.
I'm super excited about that. But Anna's incredible. And when I found Anna, there was no doubt that Anna was the one. But the search for Anna was exhaustive. I literally like spent, I tell people, and it's absolutely true, like 2 months full time searching for the actor in the movie. And
Wow.
we had set production dates, but I was ready to delay the whole thing if I didn't find somebody who was not just like good, but was going to elevate the movie. Because to me, I was smart enough to write it knowing that I could only put so much on the page, and I had a really clear idea of the character, but I'd say that I like intentionally left the character like 70% there on the page, so that like I could find somebody not just to fill those shoes, but to like collaborate with and really learn who they are and try to like merge the two, and like bring something out of somebody. And Anna's so unique because you look at, and I looked at thousands of headshots and tapes of people. A lot of young actors who've been raised to be actors have this very actor quality to them. They like look like they're perfect for like a TV show or something, but they don't look like somebody that you would stumble across on YouTube at 2 a.m.
Yeah, exactly.
And I
That's who
wanted
she
somebody
is.
yeah.
She's so real.
And it's not who she is. That's what's so remarkable about Anna, is she didn't even really know how to use a computer. She's like the least technologically savvy person. She doesn't like horror movies.
Oh wow.
But she's incredible. Like she was, I think, I don't know that I'll ever get so lucky as to find somebody like Anna on future projects, because not a lot of non-actors that we looked at, like they were really amazing people and so distinctive, but like when you sort of sit them down and try to get craft from them, when you try to have them like carry dramatically really heavy material, they that's where they sort of fall short. They're themselves, and they're fascinating, but they're not an actor. And Anna was just this incredible find because she was both. She was both a incredible actor who takes her craft so seriously and worked exhaustively to bring this character to life for months. We rehearsed for months. She was practicing obsessively for this. But she's also so her, and such a distinctive, strong personality that, and was willing to collaborate in this really deep way of like pulling her out of the performance as well.
Yeah, she's just so amazing. And I have to ask, well, so she plays Casey, and she's basically a lonely teenager, and she's playing this online game that's like a creepypasta. And she has no social interactions at all other than online. Like we don't see her parents, or like she has no friends. And I wondered, since all of us have been living in isolation because of the pandemic for over a year, and just relying on the internet, were you influenced at all by the pandemic situation, or had you already written the story?
No, we filmed the movie before the pandemic, so production on the film wrapped actually on March 1st, 2020. So like about a week before the world shut down, and we
Yeah.
were starting to hear little things about like cases popping up in America while we were in production. But it was that weird time right before when it just seemed like not a joke, but not something that was going to take over everyone's lives for a year.
Wow.
And it's a movie about isolation, and it's a movie about loneliness, and it's a movie about like socializing this parasocial sort of thing through a screen. And obviously there are resonances there with COVID and the way we've all been living. And I do think the
Yeah.
film speaks to this sort of like loneliness of this era or this age. But I always tell people that like I was just like kind of hip to it before everyone else. I was sitting inside all day and night alone online before it was cool.
Yeah, me too, actually. I mean, that's why I relate to this movie so much, because yeah, that's me too,
Yeah.
And then
Um,
a lot of people, there's a lot of people out there who live this life that Casey
yeah, and
does.
it's been really meaningful to me. Premiering at Sundance virtually was like actually amazing because I've been to Sundance in person, and usually when you're there, it's like it's all industry, it's all rich people who pack a theater, and that's an amazing experience to have as a filmmaker. But the
Yeah.
benefit of premiering virtually and anyone being able to buy a ticket for $15 was that like thousands and thousands of people who would have only had the chance to see my movie later on got to see it like right there at the moment it
Right.
premiered. And for me as like a queer trans internet nerd filmmaker, to get to sort of see immediate heartfelt responses from the trans community, the queer community, from just like kids, 18-year-old kids who like really related to the character, and people of all ages who related to the character who wouldn't have necessarily been in Park City, like that
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
very meaningful thing.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier, because I'm obviously way older, but I still relate to her so much.
Yeah.
And I did not do Sundance, but I kept hearing about this movie, and I was like, I've got to see this movie. So then
um,
I
I'm
just
glad you got to.
yeah, I was really looking forward to it. And then the Film at Lincoln Center thing happened, so I bought a ticket and I got to see it. And yeah, I just loved it. And like I said, it's stuck with me. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the way the film is shot. It's really fascinating, and it's almost documentary-like in a way. And I wondered, how did you collaborate with the cinematographer Daniel Patrick Carbone to get the right atmosphere for the film?
um, my cinematographer, Daniel Patrick Carbone, is an amazing filmmaker in his own right. He made a feature film called Hide Your Smiling Faces that came out a few years ago that is just like a gorgeous and sensitive and slow and atmospheric and beautiful film that, when I was thinking of like reference points for World's Fair, was definitely part of, floating around my brain. It's like, if my movie could just sort of like have the sensitivity of that film, I'll be in good shape. And he's a really generous collaborator and a true artist, and was so fantastic. The filmmaker DP relationship is such an interesting one, because I think I came with a really clear vision, and he sort of helped me make it real. He sort of like helped technically to make it real. And he was also, I think, because he's a filmmaker and an artist at heart, like he had like the courage to sort of like follow me down some strange roads with it. Like
Yeah.
we shot the sort of like film parts of the film on the Alexa Mini, in this mode that they have. It's like a Super 16 mode that, even though you're shooting on digital, it adds a little bit of grain, and it just looks a little softer than like HD 4K looks.
Yeah.
And he really was instrumental in finding that tone. But just also, like, it's a film that we didn't shoot with a lot of coverage on purpose, because we wanted these like long sort of like real moments being in the presence of Anna, and
Yeah.
sort of mimicking this vlog sort of style. And we shot a lot of the middle of the film, like literally, on camcorders and on the photo booth application on a Mac computer,
Oh, wow.
with really minimal, basically like everything that the character would be filming on, we filmed on with really minimal crew at that point. Maybe like one assistant camera person on set for those scenes. And
Yeah.
so Dan was really courageous, I think, as like a DP who really cares about making a film look beautiful, and he did obviously make this film look beautiful, but to also sort of like play in some strange sandboxes. I'm like a big lover of like the aesthetic, like sort of the aesthetics of lo-fi amateur quality things, in the same way that I think a lot of people are like nostalgic for VHS. I
Yeah.
find myself nostalgic for this like ultra pixelated early internet
Yeah.
thing. And the goal was to sort of like play with that kind of aesthetic world, but in like a real artful way.
Yeah. I'm definitely one of those people who loves that kind of stuff. I mean, indie horror is my thing. It really is. And that's another reason why this movie appeals so much to me. Um, there's, like I said, there's so many layers to this film, and it gets really dark. And like you mentioned earlier, people could maybe interpret it in different ways, but eventually Casey starts believing that she's going through some changes, and it affects her psychologically to the point that she becomes suicidal. Um, and the film just gets really dark at one point. And I wondered, what are you hoping that audiences will ultimately take away from this film?
I mean, it's a very, and I don't want to sound egotistical, but I do think there are a lot of layers to it, because of specifically like the form of the film, in that it's sort of towing the line between found footage and traditional sort of third person camera cinema, where people don't know they're acting in a movie. In this film, for
Yeah.
the vast majority of the film, the characters are recording themselves. They're aware that they're being watched. They're almost like playing a game with each other, and by extension with the audience watching at home,
Yeah.
through their work. And so they have this added layer of performativity, like everything that they're doing when that camera is on in front of them to some degree is a performance. And so for me, like I don't know that we as the viewer can necessarily know how honest Casey is being at any point in the film, including when she's
Yeah.
talking about going through these changes, including when she's talking about suicidal ideation or making these threats of violence. And I think there's always this, and it's at the very heart of the film, there's always this sort of chance that it's all just identity play, in the same way that a
Yeah.
horror game plays with really dark subject matter and tones as a way of like expressing yourself. There's always the chance that like what she's expressing, rather than this like cry for help or threat of something terrible, that it's almost like letting off steam, or as JLB says in the climax of the film, or testing limits as a young creative person,
Yeah.
who's sort of like clearly looking for an autonomy that she doesn't have in her daily life. And the film is it doesn't let you fully into the other side of her head, like I think we're used to in movies. And
Yeah.
the decision to do that was a decision to really speak sort of in the language of the internet. There's this idea of it's what the stuffed animal in the film is named after, this internet idea of Poe's law, which is sort of this like famous internet adage that you can never really tell if somebody is telling the truth or trolling you online.
Ooh.
And I really wanted a film that is the realm that we are left in. You know, at the end of the movie, we don't necessarily know who's telling the truth when.
Yeah.
And but you know, but like at its heart, it's a very personal film, and you know, it was made in the process of starting my gender transition, and you know, coming to terms with something that like when I was the character's age, I really didn't have any sort of language for. And I think that you know, I would stop short of saying that the character is meant to be trans because they aren't necessarily, but I do think that it's like a film about a frustrated artist, you know, like looking for a way to express herself and not having the language or the resources or the tools to do it.
Well, you brought up the stuffed animal, and I was going to ask about that because when it does get really dark, there's a scene. Hopefully, people have seen the movie by the time they show our Q&A. So
I
there's
will.
spoilers in here.
Spoilers are okay.
um, the scene where she puts the cream on her face and she's ripping the animal apart is so dark, and it almost has a violence to it. You know, it's terrifying. I wanted to know, what was it like filming that scene?
It was really an intense night. I was crying, and Anna was crying, and she ran downstairs at one point. Her mom was on set with her, and she went, "Mom, I went to a really dark place." She was like, it's this weird thing of like, it really, you know, like we both took it so seriously that it really was as sort of powerful, and that sort of like energy that you see on screen isn't just like you know, all right, back to the trailer. It was, you know, like to me, it was like the emotional sort of like climax of the shoot, as I think it is sort of the like darkest point in the film. And you know, it was just like incredibly moving to be collaborating with people on something that I I really take seriously, like a scene like that hurts, you know, hurts me, hurts Anna performing it, hurts the viewer maybe watching it.
Yeah,
I
I
like
cried.
I,
I cried too.
I don't like revel in the hurt, you know, it's not there to like take pleasure in the pain of it, but it's
Mhm.
like something about the vulnerability of all of us sort of like presenting it is really special to me. You know, I like to say that I'm like a type of person who really feels better when they listen to sad songs. And, you know, I think that's sort of like what this film is trying to do for the souls that maybe feel a similar way. And yeah, it's like the scene itself to me is such a, it's like the idea of the movie because it's, you know, like it does feel like violent, you know, and this
Mhm.
sort of violence being enacted, and yet it's being enacted on like a thing that you know isn't real, just like any movie character isn't
Yeah.
real this time. Like every, you know, it's a literal stuffed animal. And so it's like we hear so much from Casey about the kind of violence that she wants to do
Mhm.
in the lead up to this moment, but why does she choose this violence? You know, like what is it providing her? You know, and what's her relationship to it? Is I think a complicated question that I haven't seen so many people ask with the film yet.
Yeah, well, I wanted to sort of run my interpretation of something by you to see if I'm right or I'm wrong.
No such
Um,
thing as right and wrong, Michelle.
with the character of JLB, we slowly see like more and more of his life. And to me, it appears that he's sitting in a teenager's room. He's obviously older. Um, and I felt like he was a parent of a teenager who had done this online game and eventually committed suicide. And that's why he wants to help Casey. That's what I took away from it. So I just,
I I love that. You know, I don't even, I guess I suppose I do have my own ideas about who that character is and where he's coming from, but I also have my own ideas about like the decisions that I made to like leave parts of his backstory nebulous and vague.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in this idea that, like, at least in the types of films that I love, the most important relationship isn't between the characters in the film, it's between the film and the audience. It's sort of this like
Yes.
conversation that I'm trying to have with you. And I've heard so many different fan theories or you know,
Really?
or ideas and really
Have you
personal
heard this
ones.
one? Have you heard what I thought before? Has
Yeah,
anyone?
a couple people have said that,
Oh, cool.
which I'm really interested in. You know, and some people have talked a lot about like abusers that they've known, either like actual sexual, you know, assault abuse or this softer sort of abuse that
Yeah.
you know that you could interpret the film as speaking about. And some people have really like sympathized with the character, or you know, like seen this sort of like extended adolescence in him that
Yeah.
resonates. And you know, a lot of speculation about that house and who's that woman in the background who, you
Yeah.
know, I credit just with question marks because it's a question that I don't necessarily want to answer even for myself. And you know, and so all to say that like I think any sort, you know, like coloring in any lines that have deliberately been left uncolored in the movie to me would like defeat the purpose and the joy of hearing these sorts of theories.
I totally agree. I really dig movies that, you know, you can interpret different ways and there's no right way or no wrong way. And you know, that's that I think that's why I love this movie so much. Because yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
could go either way. You know, he could be like a bad guy or he could be a good guy, you know. Um, there's just so many ways to interpret his character.
It really goes back to this experience that I had when I was a kid with this
Yeah.
person, you know, and I got the sense that this was a person who was very genuine and you know, like very lonely, obviously, but also like cared, you know,
Yeah.
wasn't like this creepy predator sociopath, but was like a broken person, you know, looking for something. And like, but obviously, like you don't just start IMing a 13-year-old every night, you know, like
Right.
I don't think there are many people who do that without something in their head, whether it's in the front or the back, sort of saying like, maybe this isn't how I should be spending my time, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but I don't know, you know, and I don't know what was going on in that person's head. And I don't know if that person is still alive. I don't know I think I remember their first name, but that's about it, you know? And
Yeah.
I, uh, I think to have those relationships with the characters in the film is really interesting to me, you know, to try to be sort of left with a lot of those same ambiguities and questions is really interesting to me.
Yeah, and I the movie it's really sad and it's really beautiful at the same time to me, and because it does deal with or it's implied suicide, um, and I think it's really important that we talk more about these themes. You know, there's a lot of young people who feel isolated, people my age who feel isolated. You know, and it does really affect their mental health. And I wondered, why did you want to explore those really difficult themes of mental health and loneliness and suicide?
Well, first of all, it's just so common online, you know, it's especially among like younger generations and unmoderated forums. One of like the major inspirations for the film, which really kept me up at night, is this thing called the Blue Whale Challenge, which is essentially a suicide challenge online. That it's less known in the U.S., but in the UK and in India and in Japan, it's sort of become this like big, scary internet urban legend phenomenon of like these people online who will like challenge young people to kill themselves essentially. And like a lot of these things online, it can be really hard to tell how much of it is actually happening and how much of it
Yeah,
is, you know, like a panic.
yeah,
But I think that you know, like when I was young, when I was a teenager in these sorts of spaces, it was a different time, but it was, and it was a time when like there weren't any outlets for me, you know, it would be another few decades before I sort of could like say to myself, like I'm trans, and that feeling that I was experiencing was something like dysphoria. You know, there's a
yeah,
word for it.
yeah,
And and without that, without the word and without the understanding and just this sort of like ambient feeling of wrongness and of like not being really there and in the wrong body, like you get anger and self-hate and just hate in general and loneliness and all of these things swirling around. And you like looking for a way to express it. And I think a lot of the art that I really love and a lot of the sort of like aesthetics that I really love, whether that be like horror movies or like goth culture or punk culture or metal culture, like whatever it might be, but these communities where it's sort of about people who prefer like the dark over the light, you know, they like don't find what they're looking for in like normative, everyday, cool society. And so the images and the sort of aesthetics that they take on and find beauty in even perhaps are really dark ones.
Yeah.
You know, and don't shy away from these sorts of topics like, you know, like suicidal ideation or loneliness or queerness or violent, you know, like violent feelings. Like it's this complicated thing where like and this was one of the things that like Anna and I talked a lot about in preparation for the character, is like trying to, she really wanted to understand like the beauty that someone could see in horror. And
Yes.
and that, you know, like when she found that, I think she found the character, and a lot of pieces clicked into place. And so I don't, you know, like I think it's just trying to be like really truthful to the character who isn't me as a teenager, obviously, but like who maybe, you know, I was certainly reflecting on this like swirl of things that you want to express somehow, but you don't quite know how.
Yeah, my computer's telling me that we're about to run out of time. So I know I've kept you for a long time. And I apologize,
No,
but
it's
I
great.
really
Yeah,
do appreciate it though. Um,
me too.
like I said, I think the movie is really beautiful. It's really sad. It's got so many layers, and I really, really like that about it. And you know, it might even help someone out there, you know, who's feeling lonely, who's feeling like Casey, you know, and they see
Thank
the
you.
movie.
Yeah, even people who've been there before, which I think, like you said, a lot of people have.
Yeah.
Like I said, one of the most moving things has been hearing response from especially the transgender community, and having them sort of see their own struggles kind of like invisibly within the film in a way that they maybe haven't before. That's been
Yeah.
a really meaningful thing to me. And I do think that, you know, if you can't relate to the film, like God bless, like go have a nice life. But
Exactly.
but if you can, then, you know, obviously the hope is that it's sort of like, I think like one review said, like a warm hand, you know, to anyone who's felt that way.
Yeah, I totally relate to the film, and you know, I'm way older, so it's not just for teenagers.
No, definitely not.
I
And
think.
you know, like it's about the internet, but it isn't about the internet. You know,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
about it's about a feeling. Yeah, like I think most good films are. It's like trying to express a feeling.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, this has been so wonderful talking to
Yeah,
you. I have
so
to
nice to
say,
talk to you, Michelle.
I really, really appreciate this because I love this movie so much, and I'm really happy it's going to HBO's so more people can see it.
Yep, some unsuspecting viewers can stumble upon it.
I'm definitely gonna watch it again. I know. And thank you so much
Thanks,
for doing
thanks
this
to the
for
whole
Chattanooga Film
Chattanooga team
Festival.
for thanks for having us at Chattanooga. We're happy to be here, and yeah, good luck with everything.
Yeah, I asked if I could talk to you specifically because I love the movie so much.
I'm
Thank you.
honored.
Thank you so, so much.
All right, take care. Have a
All right.
great day. It was
You
lovely to
too.
meet you, Michelle.
Great to meet you. Take care. Thank you so much.